Hi, I'm Carrie Spaulding, the Thirtysomething coach, and my guests today are Kristen Russo and Danielle Owens-Reid, founders of EveryoneIsGay.com. And Everyone is Gay started in 2010 as an advice site for everyone with an emphasis on LGBTQ youth. And through stories and humor and a lot of lip syncing, Kristen and Danielle have inspired and supported thousands of people of all ages. And they also tour the country and visit schools and speak to students. And recently they have geared up to launch an incredible project for parents. So Kristen and Danielle, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
thank you.
So for people who are brand new to Everyone is Gay, what's the mission?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that because we just took a look at the mission to sort of help fit it with a lot of the new work that we're doing, and the mission that we work with Everyone is Gay is that we work to help LGBTQ youth in three ways. One, by helping them, which is the advice that you just spoke of in the videos. Two, by helping their schools. Danielle and I go to visit high school and college campuses across the country. And then three, by now helping their parents, which is a new initiative that we just started.
So what's so inspiring to me, and I know to a lot of the people who are watching and listening, is that you took that mission and you made it into your job, which takes a lot of courage, right? Where you could have probably taken a safer and in some ways easier and at least more conventional path. And I'm curious kind of what advice you have for people who are trying to find that courage or that clarity themselves to find their purpose and go after it.
For us, it's still a terrifying ride because we live everything month to month. And the only reason that we were able to quit our day jobs is because of our readers supporting us on our first tour. And then continuing to support us every time we would run out of money and we'd be like, okay, we have to crowdsource. And, they would all come behind us. And I think that if you're doing something that is helping a group of people and that group of people can see that need, they're behind you 100%. Without fail, every time we've ever needed help from anything. And sometimes we reach out to our friends and family who just recognize like what we're doing and how much of our heart is in it. And they help us because they believe in us and we believe in ourselves. And, once we quit our day jobs, it was kind of hard to go back.
Right. Once you've declared it, you were sort of all in. So it sounds like one of the things was reaching out and asking for the help that you needed, but also a real trust in the feedback that you're getting from people that the work you're doing is important.
Yeah, I think that the feedback that we get from the people who read our work on a day-to-day basis is really the core of what keeps us moving forward with it. It's one thing to sit on one side of a computer screen and be like, we hope that this is doing something good, and then it's an entirely different experience to actually see those people and engage with them and hear how the work that you've done has changed their lives. And that is something that was and still is just completely shocking and astounding to both Danielle and I. It's something that we would never be able to turn our backs on.
Well, so, and you've said that everyone is gay. The concept is that, obviously not that everyone is gay, really, but that we're all humans going through the same issues and dealing with the same stuff, and that really shows up on your website in terms of the themes that come up again and again and again. And I'm curious, from your perspective, what is it that people need most?
In general, in advice, like in...
Well, so what are the sort of themes that for you stand out?
Personally, I think that people need to see themselves reflected in the world around them most. I think that is one of the biggest reasons why we see so many readers come to our site and come back to our site, is that there's something incredibly encouraging about knowing that you are not the only person feeling the feelings that you're feeling. You're not the only person struggling with, particular issues. That in the shortest way of saying it, you're not alone.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the two main things that everyone wants is, one, to not feel alone, like Kristen just spoke to, and two, to not feel misunderstood. Because a big, big part of our advice is about communication and being able to talk to one another. And we all communicate differently, so it's all about finding a way in which to communicate that makes everyone feel comfortable. But it's as soon as you feel misunderstood, you feel dumb and you feel afraid, and that's like the one thing that I think if you felt like you were understood, you'd be able to communicate better and you'd feel better about yourself, and so those are the two main themes I think that kind of circle around.
Yeah, well, that's so huge, and it always boils down to talk. You guys always say talk to them, right? And that's so huge, but it's a little easier said than done, because showing up and speaking your truth and being honest about who you are can make you really vulnerable. And one of the things that I admire most about you two is how vulnerable you make yourselves to your readers, and that has a huge impact. I mean, it makes people feel connected to you and like they're not alone. But it also takes a lot of courage to do that. So I'm just curious, do you ever struggle with that vulnerability, and how do you deal with it? So that our listeners might think, well, how does one enter into that playing field that way?
It's an interesting question, because I think that because we see so much vulnerability from other people on a day-to-day basis, it's also really strengthened Danielle and I. I know for me that I've always been okay with sharing my feelings with other people, and I've always kind of seen the commonality that we all have, that we all struggle, that, despite how we might all deal with it differently, it's definitely something that we all go through. But on a day-to-day basis, we're hearing from people who are saying, hey, this is the thing that's hardest for me. Here is my brain. Here is my entire struggle. Help. And so, seeing that every day constantly also is more encouraging to us to share with other people, because we also see that commonality. Everyone is Gay is definitely street. It has shaped my life incredibly.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say, I feel like it's almost like we've gotten better at it as we've come along. Like when we first started, I would be like, LOL, 5 jokes. And if somebody talked about sex, I would just scream, ee, and let person answer it. You know what I mean? And I think that because we've been doing it for 4 years, it's been kind of like free therapy. Every time somebody asks a question, we have to find something in ourselves to relate that to, and we have to be okay with the fact that we're going to share that with everyone. And don't get me wrong, I also pay for therapy, but I think because of the free therapy of 4 years, our communication and our ability to be open you open up to 100 people, and then all of a sudden you're opening up to 20,000 people, and then now we're opening up to 80,000 people. So it's like we can't really just stop, and each day I get a little better and better and better with it.
But it's a practice, right? It's not something that you're like, oh, check, I'm vulnerable now, and
no,
figured it out.
It's definitely a practice.
And I mean, I think that sort of embedded in your response just there is something that you do really consistently on Everyone is Gay. You're always infusing humor into some pretty tough places sometimes, and that's such a gift to be able to help people sort of see the humor. But it can be really hard to find the funny when it's your own life. And so I'm wondering, what advice do you have for people who are feeling like they're really in the pit of things to find humor or find the funny or find the lightness in their lives?
I mean, I think that you can't always find humor in a minute by minute, on a minute by minute basis. But I think that the key really is being in the moment. When you're in the moment with stuff, you can be sobbing on the floor in 1 second and then laughing hysterically at the fact that your cat just tried to jump on the bed and missed it and fell. It's really about being present in your minute to minute experiences. And I think, Danielle and I struggle with doing these things in our own lives as well. It's way easier to tell other people, hey, be patient with yourself, be patient with your feelings. And that's key, being patient with yourself. Letting yourself feel really sad sometimes is very important. But it's tricky. I mean, we've gone through things ourselves where I've looked at Danielle and been like, we tell people to do this all the time, but it's so hard, It's definitely, I think being in the moment is the only way you can get through things that are difficult and find the things that are still able to be smiled at.
I totally agree. And also, that's a really good question, by the way.
Oh,
really good question.
Thank you.
And it's hard to just come up with an answer, but I think that Kristen's right. You have to be able to be present. And I also, sometimes when I'm like so bummed out, and usually like talking to Kristen will bring me around, or it'll make me feel a little better, or I'll at least be able to be more logical about things. Sometimes I have to just stop talking to everyone and I play Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus. I know it sounds dumb, but like, that song is ridiculous, and there's no way to cry while listening to it. Also, we found that you cannot frown and skip at the same time.
Yeah, it's not possible.
I'm going to have to try that right after.
Do you want to try it right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if there's room for skipping over here. But maybe I'll take an after video of the skipping frowning. I'll send it to you guys.
Yeah, everybody who's watching this should just stand up right now and try to skip and frown.
Everybody right now, skip and frown. So, part of it is about making space for all the feelings, right? And kind of giving yourself permission that you can be laughing 1 minute and you can still go back to crying if you need to, and then you can laugh again, and then you can go to Everyone is Gay and ask a question and know that you're not alone. Okay, so, but another big theme that I see is self-acceptance and self-compassion, which is another one that's so hard to do. What do you think, and this might be a tough question on the spot, but what do you think is at the core of self-acceptance or just kind of loving yourself?
I mean, I think that seeing how other people around us love those that they're close to is a really incredible way to learn to appreciate yourself. I know that for me, the many relationships I've had with friends, with girlfriends, with family, seeing how people appreciate me and what they appreciate, and then also seeing that just in the world around me has been really eye-opening to, I don't know, I think it underlines the fact that we all appreciate people for very specific reasons, and reflecting on why you appreciate the people in your life. You're like, well, I really do care about Danielle mostly because her hair is so amazing. Like, it's just, it's not, your hair is amazing. But, we appreciate
that was my next question. So
how do you get your hair to look so
amazing? Yeah, how do your hair look so good?
But yeah, I think that for me, that's been key. And I think that if we spent more time thinking about that, we would have the ability to find the small things about us and the large things about us that are wonderful and unique, and that would draw others toward us.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think that it does take time. I don't think you can just, read a book about The Secret and then feel better. You know what I mean? But it takes time, and you have to learn to love yourself for a million different reasons. You can't just focus on one thing that you think is great, because when it comes down to it, everything that we love about ourselves, it's not going to be perfect every single day. So it's about finding 20,000 million tiny things that you love about yourself, so that when one thing breaks, you still have other things to focus on. And also, we have to stop comparing ourselves to other people. And I was reading this thing once, because everyone's so obsessed with competition and being the best, and you get really bummed out if someone gets a promotion over you, or if somebody has more Twitter followers than you, or whatever. And I was reading this thing that was basically talking about pop stars, and they were the fact that Rihanna is super famous and super successful does not hinge on the fact that Lady Gaga is super famous and super successful. There is room for everyone. There is room for everyone to be as successful and as wonderful and as amazing as you want to be. It's just about finding that for you and not comparing yourself and trying to stack up against everyone else.
Well, and it's ironic because if you're so busy kind of trying to be who somebody else is, you're never going to find that place of what it is that you have to offer that's unique. And I think it really comes back to the vulnerability too, because it takes a lot of vulnerability to kind of trust yourself that there's something in you to give, and that you're okay the way you are. And if you can kind of get through all the crap of comparison and all of that, it can really free you up for that.
Mm-hmm.
So much of your focus so far has been on youth, and until recently you really were focused on youth, but you also have always gotten questions from all ages. So let's talk about adults for a little bit, if that's okay. I'm really curious, what do you see as what do you hear or what do you see as the challenges of coming out or transitioning or coming to terms with your gender identity in your 30s or in adulthood generally that make it different? So much is obviously the same at any age, right? Everyone is gay. But what do you see as the differences?
I think that when you're 25 and under, you're in a completely different headspace where you're like, you know that you're still figuring your life out, and if you like make a decision now and then change your mind, it's okay because like you're young and it's fun. And then when you hit 30, you're like, I've already been this person for 30 years. I can't just change who I am to everyone around me. You know, not as if you're changing who you are, but like for everyone else. And so it becomes this terrifying thing where the entire coming out process, whether it be your sexuality or your gender, the entire process becomes about everyone else and what everyone else is thinking and how everyone else is going to react. Whereas when you're younger, you're like, but this is who I am. I have to tell you. Like, I have to let you know who I am. That's a main. When I've talked to people who are older, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, and I think seeing the people around you, you know, your whole environment once you are past college and even past like those first few years after college, your friends, what they're doing with their lives, everything starts to sort of shift. And so for you to be wondering, wait, do I want to be with this particular gender of person for the rest of my life, or do I not? Or do I identify as this gender, or do I not? Is a huge question to have when it appears to you that everyone else around you is pairing off and doing their thing and making their life and taking steps forward. So I think that, you know, it's a difficult process at any age, but at least when you're a younger person, you're surrounded by people who are also like exploring career, exploring, you know, just exploring. That's what the early 20s are all about.
Mm-hmm.
So you've sort of become more, at least seemingly more cemented into whatever identity you've identified as or people have identified you as so far. And, you know, it occurs to me also that so much more, when you think about people who are in their 30s or beyond now, there's so much more space to be talking about this stuff. And there are sort of explicit options, I think, that if that makes any sense, that people would never have been talking about 30 years ago. So that opens up a lot of questions and a lot of space for people who are maybe wouldn't have even started to think about coming out or talking about it openly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also think that there's an interesting experience that happens for some people, not that it makes it an easy experience, but, you know, for people who come to better understand their sexuality or their gender identity at a later age, I think that for many of them, they've been struggling with this piece of them for a long time, even if it wasn't on the surface. So although in a lot of ways it's more difficult, in a lot of ways it's also incredibly freeing for people who are at that stage of their life to finally know like what it was that was weighing them down for all of that time, and to finally feel like they can, you know, express themselves the way that they want to and finally understand who they are. So I think that there's a positive. Yeah, exactly. I figured it out.
So, go ahead, Danielle.
Well, I was just going to say, I was just thinking about how, and this experience is based on Kristen and I going to schools and not necessarily like a personal experience, but I also think that when you're younger, your friends and the people around you are more apt to ask you questions, which then makes it like a conversation, whereas I think that when you're 30 or whatever, 29, 32, I don't know, and you say, you know, I'm going to transition, people are like, oh, cool, yeah, that's fine. And even if they're seemingly supportive, it's like nobody's asking me questions, like nobody knows what my pronoun is, no one is having a conversation about it. They're just like, oh yeah, whatever, you can do what you want.
Of like, okay, you do your thing, and
yeah.
And so there's not as much space to process it or to feel like people are invested in learning more about this part of you.
Right. Exactly.
So what would your advice be to somebody who maybe is watching or listening right now and wants to come out but is feeling scared? particularly maybe to an adult listener?
I mean, I think that the key is really checking in with yourself and what you want to do for you. Because I think there are a lot of messages out there that say, you know, you need to come out and you need to do it this way, or you need to be proud, or you need to, you know, fill in the blank. And that's all well and good for a lot of people, but I think it makes a lot of us skip the part where we check in and say, what do I actually want? What do I want people to know? What do I not want people to know? How do I want them to know? And so that to me is a first step. Decide if you want to know, why you want them to know, and then think about them. Think about that person or those people, and how do you communicate with them? You know, if you're thinking about your parents in particular, maybe you're really good. Maybe your family like sits around a dinner table and has conversations about all sorts of stuff, and so it'll come up. But maybe that isn't the way you communicate, and writing a letter or, you know, an email or anything like that. Like, there are a million ways that you can come out. And so not feeling the obligation to do it in a particular way, I think, is a great first step.
I totally agree. And then I think once you have come out and it's getting into that place where nobody's asking you any questions or engaging, I think you can bring it up. And I know it's like super awkward, and when even in like a dating life, when you realize your friend doesn't like someone and you're like, can we talk about the fact that you hate the person I'm dating? Like, it might be awkward, totally, but I think that the conversation is so, so important, and that when it comes down to it, you and your friends will both appreciate that you made that awkward moment happen and were able to say, like, can we talk about whether or not this is weird or it makes you uncomfortable?
Totally. Yeah. Coming out is very rarely not awkward. It just, you know, I mean, Danielle and I both have like pages and pages of stories that are hysterical looking back on them now, that, you know, coming out to coworkers by just like shouting that you're gay because you got so uncomfortable, things like that, where in the moment it was like you just want to melt into the floor. But now looking back on it, it was hysterically funny. I'm friends with those people, etc. So knowing that, I mean, that's a big thing too. Knowing that coming out isn't a one-time thing. It's a process. It's a long series of conversations, whether they be lighthearted and full of laughter or not so lighthearted and full of tears. You start at a place and you journey before you say, like, okay, I've come out. You know.
So, you know, speaking of, you mentioned the dinner table. We're coming up on a time of year where a lot of people are heading home, and talk about awkward. So I'm curious, sort of what would you want ringing in the ears of people who are going home? Whether it's, and we'll talk more about parents in a second, but whether it's parents kind of trying to deal with their feelings regarding their children's identities, or whether it's kids who are, you know, out and the family's not comfortable, or not out. I know that that's so many different issues, but is there anything that you would want to say as we head into the holiday season?
Well, as a person who came out over the Thanksgiving dinner table, I would say two things. One, you can't always plan these things, right? A lot of times you're home for the holidays, you're around your family, you're like half excited because you're around people you love, and half ready to pull your hair out of your head because you forgot all of the nuanced ways that they drive you crazy. And sometimes the moment presents itself and you're going to say something and you're not going to plan for it, and it's going to happen and it might be awkward. There are more Thanksgivings. There are more, you know, the holidays will happen again. So allowing yourself to be there and be present, I think, is key. You know, because if we were giving like, well, it might not be good to come out over the Thanksgiving dinner table because X, Y, Z. It's like, when you're there, you're there. You're going to do what you're going to do. So that would be my first part of advice.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the exact same way. I don't even know that I have anything to add, because you can plan it, and you can write a letter, and you can try your hardest to figure out exactly how it's going to happen, but it's just going to pop out of your mouth when it pops out of your mouth. So I would just let it happen naturally and let the conversations flow. And if you plan to come out at Thanksgiving and that's been your plan all year, and then you get to the end of Thanksgiving break and you haven't done it, don't beat yourself up about it, because it'll happen when you're comfortable.
And if you do come out over Thanksgiving, actually, we literally, if we're talking about family, like parents, we timed our first 4 parent videos to happen before the holidays for that. It literally, like, that was a conversation we had. We were like, everybody goes home, they see their families, and so many people use that as their time to come out. So we'll have some more resources up for you too.
So run up to your bedroom or wherever you're staying and go to everyone'sgay.com and check out the Parents Project. And speaking of which, you have just had a magnificently successful campaign to raise funds for the Parents Project. Please tell us about that amazing project.
Thank you. You just made that all sound so fancy and beautiful and wonderful.
Well, I feel like it's like getting the first interview after, like, Beyonce's baby or something, you know? Like, I was the first.
That is exactly what this is. That is exactly what this is.
Yes.
Yeah, we just did an Indiegogo campaign. We crowdsourced just over $50,000 to begin the Parents Project, which will be a fully digital platform for parents of LGBTQ youth, or LGBTQ any age who have just come out. But there will be videos, and we have done the first 4, which Kristen was just mentioning, and it's basically the parents or parent or family member and the kid talking about the coming out process. And we're also going to do advice videos, and it's just going to be all digital and right there, so that when you come out over Thanksgiving dinner and your mom is like, I don't know what to do, but doesn't want to scream about it, goes to her computer, types in, what do I do? We'll be there.
Exactly.
So this project is just so needed, and I'm wondering, what do you think all parents might not necessarily know? They might think they know how their kids identify, or whether they're straight or gay or trans or whatever. So what do you think all parents need to know and can do to support their children, regardless of their child's identity?
That is a fantastically phrased question, because that is,
Another.
I mean, it really, you deserve at least one hair
Yeah,
for
can I
that.
have some high fives from both?
Yeah.
Yay.
You know, I think that, so Danielle and I, the Parents Project came from the fact that we were working on a book for parents, and we were gathering resources, and we found a need for some more digital resources. As we were working on the book itself and writing it, the more we wrote advice to parents, the more we both felt like this would be a book. This is a book that every parent should read, not parents of gay kids, you know, not parents of queer kids, not parents of trans kids, but parents of any kid. And I think that if you're a parent of any child, the thing that you need to do is to make your home environment a very accepting and open one, because that allows, you know, if your kid is struggling with sexuality or gender identity, it gives them that much more room to talk about who they are, and to not have to worry that you're going to judge them. But if your kid isn't LGBTQ, then you have created a child who's going to grow up and be accepting and, you know, engage with other people across all, you know, identities without having judgment. So it's really a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kristen is going to get tired of hearing me say this, but it's my new favorite phrase. I don't think that parents raise kids. I think communities raise kids. So it's not about a parent reading a book and doing one thing correctly in their home. It's about, like, raising your children regardless of how they act, and being, regardless of how they act, who am I? Regardless of anything, like being in a community and being around kids and being a human being, like, you have to be open and you have to be aware and you have to know what's going on. And the book, I think it's great as advice for LGBTQ youth, but I think it's decided, because we all get stuck in our, like, well, you have one gay uncle and you have to be nice to him because being gay is normal, you know, and then that's the only experience. But that's not the only experience that they have. We have the experience of everyone in our community. So I just think talking about, you know, issues and being super open is really important. Also, I don't know what I just said. I feel like I said 1,000 things and none of them made sense.
I'm sure that that they'll just become more and more profound and clear with more watches and listens. So, and that's sort of what kids need, what children need. What do you think? I mean, you've done a lot of thinking about this because you decided to create a whole project for it. What is it that parents need most?
I mean, I think parents need the same things that kids need, which is to see people talking about these things in a way that's accessible and matter of fact and honest and open and just like, hey guys, this is real life. You know, I think that Danielle and I are in a really unique position because we sort of are like straddling the divide between the two worlds. You know, we're not parents ourselves. We're also not young people ourselves in terms of, you know, being teens or in college. And what we found is that both sets of communities, if you want to call them that, need the same thing. They all want to be able to laugh. They all want to be able to ask questions without feeling judged. And they all want, you know, the ability to find resources and to find advice that doesn't, you know, that doesn't talk about these things as though it's always doom and gloom and heavy. You know, I don't think that's the experience of the majority of people. I think that's part of the experience for some people, but, you know, I think offering a full variety of experiences is key.
I also think that what you said about asking questions without being judged is really, really important. And I think, you know, regardless of anyone's age, that's a thing that it's like what I was saying earlier about coming out when you're older. You just don't want to ask questions because you're afraid of looking stupid. And we can kind of provide that you are at least scrolling through questions that are sort of like the ones that you have. And not only are other people asking them, but you have people answering them and not making you feel like an idiot for it.
Raise your hand if you've been there.
So you have shared so much great stuff here, and the work you do is so important. And I'm really hoping that you'll tell our listeners and our viewers how they can get and find that support if they need it, and also how they can support the work that you're doing.
Sure. Well, starting with everyoneisgay.com would be a great place to find most of what we do. I mean, you know, we are we're definitely present on, I think, every social media outlet that a person or organization could be present on. But all of that stems from the site itself. So you can certainly find a lot. We offer daily advice, written advice on the site. We make videos once a week. And then maybe, Danielle, you can speak to some of the new stuff that we're building.
Like the Parents Project or like the Second Opinions?
Both.
We have so many things, you guys. Yeah, I mean, we also, if you're like, this is cool, but these are two white girls who date girls and that is one experience, we also have a Second Opinions project that we just started a couple months ago, where people from different identities and different backgrounds answer a question once a week. So every Tuesday is a second opinion, and it's a question that Kristen and I feel like we can't 100% speak to, or we feel like someone else might speak to it better, or someone else might know better resources. So that's also a really, really a thing that I'm really, really excited about. And then as far as supporting us, we're fiscally sponsored right now. We are in the middle of a whirlwind because we're trying to start a 501c3 that is separate from us, that is for touring high schools and building curriculum. So we're in a mess, but if you go to everyoneisgay.com and there's like a little donate button, and we are fiscally sponsored and we have PayPal, and if you're like, I really want to support you guys, but I'd really like to wear a shirt that says everyone is gay, that also helps us out. So
we have a lot of t-shirts, a lot of stickers, a lot of buttons.
So any last words that you want to leave our listeners with? Any final mantras?
I have something actually that kind of comes from what Danielle was just talking about, related to supporting us. And this is not just for us, but supporting any organization. I think, you know, your demographic, I think, is people in their 30s by nature of its title alone. And I think that what you find
how smart they are.
Yeah. But what you find with people who are in their 30s, I'm in my 30s, a lot of you who may be watching this have careers, have skills that you worked on for a long time in your life, and that is an incredible way to support other organizations, whether it be us or an organization that you believe in that does an entirely different kind of work. We're always looking for help. If you do graphic design, if you do photography, if you do, whatever it may be, there's usually a way to intersect your talents and abilities to offer them to nonprofit organizations or just small startup organizations who need that kind of help. And I think that's a thing that we skip over a lot, that yeah, it's great to donate money if you have it, but if you don't, or even if you just want to donate your skills, it's super needed.
And people don't always realize what they might have to offer, kind of bringing us full circle to the beginning, right, with the idea of what your own mission is and finding a way to make a contribution with your own, own mission.
Exactly.
Danielle Owens-Reid and Kristen Russo are the founders of everyoneisgay.com and the soon-to-be-launched Parents Project. Please visit them, support them, get support at www.everyoneisgay.com. Famous celebrities, Danielle Owens-Reid and Kristen Russo. We're all signing off now.